بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله وسلم عليه وعلى من اتبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, we'll start from Hadith number 31 today. As per quoted in this book, it's a very small Hadith, but it's actually slightly longer than in reality. However, in this book it says the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said, "Ishfa'u faltu'jaru," intercede and you will be rewarded. Now, we're still within the category or the topic of Hadith where it's talking about helping other Muslims, being good to them, and so on. So it's in light of that this Hadith is actually mentioned in this book. Now, in this Hadith, it uses the word intercession, but it's actually a bit more general than that, or it's like we could use other words like helping out, mediation, and so on. So what is this? This is like, you getting in the middle of something, two parties, for example, and helping someone out, solving a problem. Ideally helping someone out who is in trouble. And you do that for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. So you do that in one of two ways. Either by getting benefit to that person who's oppressed, or preventing some harm coming their way. Now, I've mentioned this before, this sort of thing, we face with this quite often, more than we think. These are situations where, it could happen at job, it could happen in some like workplace and university, in the house or whatever. Someone is, for example, being blamed or something. That's a very good example. So you get in the middle and you try to help out. No, it's not like this, or it's like this, and so on. So basically you're getting in the middle to either benefit or prevent harm coming someone's way. And this is something that is required of a Muslim to do. We should be doing with all people, but other Muslims have a big right on us for us to protect them. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying in this, intercede and you'll be rewarded. But actually, before I get into the types of it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this regard as well in Surah An-Nisa, verse 85, whoever mediates, which is the same intercession word, whoever mediates in a good cause will have a share in the reward thereof. And whoever mediates in a bad cause will have a share in the burden of sin thereof. So this verse tells you that you getting in the middle of everything, even with the right intention, doesn't make it correct. You've got to actually be doing the right thing and actually causing benefit or stopping harm. Because you trying to cause benefit to someone who you think might be oppressed, you actually might end up doing harm and oppressing somebody else, the other side. So you have to be careful. So intercession is, like, generally speaking, is of two types. Okay, praiseworthy and rewarding. So this is where you're doing something for a good cause, like helping the oppressed, as I mentioned. And don't think oppressed with that word oppressed. Okay, look, in the Western countries we don't really have those sort of people here, and so on. It's not like that. It could be even at workplace, as I mentioned, someone being blamed for something that they're not responsible for, or like they're being accused, you've done this and they haven't done it, or this is your fault and it's not their fault, and you know the truth in this situation, for example. Okay, so this is the type of thing that's called in mind. So you get in the middle, you help the person out. So this is a praiseworthy reward, the praiseworthy type of intercession, and the rewarding type. Okay, but then beware of the other side. The other side is the blameworthy and incorrect one. So this is where you're stepping in for some evil cause, for something wrong. So you're helping someone oppress or wrong others. You're doing it the exact opposite of what a Muslim should do, what an honorable person is required to do. Now, in this regard, to give you an example of what this is talking about, something like this happened at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. A woman, she stole and she deserved the Islamic punishment. But she was from a noble family. So the people, they knew the punishment is going to be severe, and how could this happen to their noble someone from their noble status and noble ranking people. So they thought, who can we send to talk to the Prophet ﷺ so that the punishment doesn't happen on that lady? So they sent a very close companion to the Prophet ﷺ, who had grown up in the Prophet ﷺ's household, and they got him to talk to the Prophet ﷺ, hoping that he would, reduce the punishment, waive the punishment, give something else, or so on. So when the Prophet ﷺ heard about this, he got extremely, extremely angry at that companion. The companion sought forgiveness from Allah, from the Prophet ﷺ for that. And then it is based on this story that the Prophet ﷺ famously mentioned the next morning, the hadith that I quoted a couple of sessions ago, where he said, one of the reasons why people of the past, nations of the past, were destroyed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is because when someone weak and low in their low status person in their society would do something wrong, they would, for example, implement the punishment, the full force of the law. But when someone high status, high ranking person from the noble class did something wrong, they would not do it. So this is exactly what was happening when they sent one of the companions in this situation. And if you think about it, doesn't this happen all the time? As an example, let's say in companies, you've got a type of mistake, okay? Now that mistake, if it's done by someone low in the company, they may even get the boot, you're out of the company, or the final warning, for example. But that's done by someone of a high status, a high ranking in the company, it might even be overlooked the first time around. It's definitely not the same reaction. So this sort of thing is not permitted. And if we are aware of this happening where someone who doesn't deserve it is being blamed for something, then we need to step in and try and help out. The mediation or intercession, or call it what you like, but try to help the oppressed to not get what they don't deserve. We're not talking about you coming in the middle to stop what is deserved by people. No, what is not deserved by people. Okay? So these were things talking about, so we had a number of hadiths talking about the rights of Muslims and how we should be helping each other, how we should be regarding each other, like we're meant to be like a body, where if one part is hurting, every other part is staying awake at night. We have rights upon each other, rights meaning something that we must be doing, and so on and so forth. So we had a number of hadith on this topic. Now we move to a different topic, which is hadith number 32. This is where the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said that there is no day on which the people get up, but two angels come down, and one of them says, "Oh Allah, give in compensation," which means like give a reward, "to the one who spends." And the other angel says, "Oh Allah, cause ruin to the one who withholds." Okay? So this is talking about two angels coming down every single day, and one saying this and one saying that. So one making dua for a person and one making dua against a person, but it's related to one characteristic, which is of spending. So this hadith is talking about, it shows a way for us to get somebody else to make dua for us. How you always hear people saying to each other, "Brother, sister, make dua for me." Okay, make dua for us, and so on. Here, you've got a way where the appointed angel could make dua for you, which is Allah give this person, a return or something reward, or more for what they have done. So we strive after other people making dua for us, but here we have a way of getting dua from an angel. But you've got to be careful, because the hadith says the other side is also could happen, which is if you don't behave properly and if you don't do what's required, then another angel could make dua against you, and that would be the worst thing that's possible. Already we don't want any single person making dua against us, but imagine if an angel is making dua against us. And this hadith is one of the hadith that encourages us to be constant and regular in act of worship. Another one of these hadith is what I've quoted here. The Prophet ﷺ was asked which deed is the most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he said it's the one done regularly and constantly, even if it is small. The reason being, because what happens is when you do something frequently and often, then you're remembering Allah very often. And remembering Allah often is the key. And the more you remember Allah, the more frequently you remember Allah, the more it will actually encourage you to do other good deeds, and it'll stop you from doing haram. So from that perspective, this is good. But this is not 100% on the face of it. The reason being, let's say for example, if someone is only giving, like they're very well off, and they're giving only $1 a day, so at the end of the month they've only given $30. But there's someone else who's giving, let's say, $1,000 every month. So you can't say hard and fast rule that the one who's giving something every day is definitely better than someone who's giving less than that, less frequent than that. But what we're supposed to strive for is combine the two, which means if you have the means to give a lot and make it frequent. But if you don't have the means, then do not worry, but just try to make it frequent. That's the idea. The idea is to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frequently and try to obey Him frequently, because it will lead to other good acts of worship, and that watchfulness will help you in avoiding haram and staying away from haram, inshaAllah. Yeah, this spending that the hadith is talking about, so that it's not just like on the poor and the needy, but it also includes the family. So spending on the family, excuse me, is one of the best expenditures that we can do. But this is unfortunately where a lot of people go to an extreme. So yes, we're supposed to spend on the family, but not to a level where you've gone beyond what's required, what's necessary, and what's good for them, and gone into extravagant, into wastefulness, into things that are definitely not praiseworthy. So as an example, buying kids toys, okay, the odd toy, what they might need is fine, but then buying them toys very frequently, buying them very expensive toys, and the minute they break something, instead of teaching them a lesson, for example, you immediately replace it and so on. So those sort of things might not be as praiseworthy as you hope. So we need to be careful. So now the hadith includes the one who spends on the family, as well as it includes what you spend on the poor and the needy and other people. In fact, it's even more general than that. Let's say what you might decide to give something to your neighbor, okay, which is something many of us don't do, unfortunately. But if you decide to send something over to the neighbor, so there's expenses involved in there, right? So that also would count as something that you have done for the day. Or if a visitor came to you and you were, providing them something, that would also count as expenditure towards this, okay? But the hadith, even though it gives the impression that it's got to be every day you got to give something, and some people unfortunately understood it that way, that's not exactly what it is, that you must give something every single day. It depends on who you are and your nature, and if you're a charity giver or not. Because what it's getting at is, okay, if you're someone, let's say, spends on the family and what's required, takes care of them, obviously without extravagance, and you're someone, let's say, who gives in charity and who takes care of the poor and the needy and the masjids and the dawah centers and everything like that. Let's say you're someone like that. But then a day comes where, let's say, your family has traveled away, so there's nothing for you to spend on them, and you're just in the house all day, for example, and you haven't seen any beggar, any poor person, and you don't know of any, no messages were sent to you that this masjid or that dawah center is looking for something or someone. So you end up not giving on that day, for example. So you haven't actually done any expenditure that would meet this hadith. So it's not like that day the angel will make dua against you, because you're actually not the type of person that deserves that dua. So you're not a miser, you're not stingy, you're a giver. It's just that day there was no place to give it in. So this is talking about the hadith where the angel makes dua against you. It's talking about situations where the person's nature is like that, like they're not giving it, or they're very stingy. They think like 10 times before something comes out of them. And even when something comes out, it's like a tiny amount and so on. So it's talking about that. So now, if you're able to do something as frequent as every day, like literally every day, that's fine and good. That's definitely good. But don't think that if you're not able to, then, oh my God, tonight, it's already Isha time, I haven't given something in charity, so I must do it. It's not to that extent. As long as you're not of the opposite type, a miser, and you're of the type that's a good person, that's a charity giver, that's someone who spends on the family, takes care of them to the necessities, then inshallah you'd be okay. The angel would not be making dua on that sort of a person. Now, why should we be spending in charity and for the sake of Allah? So, firstly is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is the key to all success in this life and the hereafter. To please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the goal that we need to have with everything. So even when I said, for example, buying toys for your kids, or buying something for your spouse in the house, and so on. So those things, we tend to just do it as a reflex reaction when a kid asks, for example. But ideally, it should be like this, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us to take care of ourselves, our families, and so you're spending on them. And as long as it's not to an extravagant level, or you're not buying them anything haram and so on, then it's okay. Then it's actually part of Islam to be spending on them. So that's why we should be doing everything to please Allah. Means your intention. Make it for the sake of Allah. And I talked about this in the first hadith, this is going back 2 months ago, where I talked about the intention. So how we can make our shopping into an act of worship, how you can make work into an act of worship, how you can make your sleep into an act of worship. That's what it's talking about. Another is to get blessings in what we have. That's why you'd want to spend in charity. Now again, we have covered this. Remember, if you show gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you'll get 2 things. You'll get blessings in that, so they will be retained, and you get an increase as well. And a lot of us these days are not feeling the blessings in what we have. Feeling the blessing in what you have means, for example, let's say your salary is X amount, which is, it could even be the average of the society. Now, average of the society may not be too good, but if you've got blessings in that wealth that's coming your way, that average means you end up saving heaps. You'll have so much left over after your needs and necessities. That's blessings. And same with blessings in time. You'll be able to achieve a lot during the day. But unfortunately, what happens with many people, we don't know where the 24 hours went. We quite often think, my God, where did the time go? Was it really 24 hours? Is it really nighttime? Hang on, is the clock going fast? What's happening? We panic because blessings are not there. And that's the most important thing. It's not how much you have, it's the blessings. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts blessings in our things, in our provisions, in our lives, that's all you need. If you look at some of the great scholars of the past, you'd be amazed how much they've achieved in their life. Like, how did they achieve this? They wrote so many books, hundreds and hundreds of volumes, and they've given thousands and thousands of lectures. Like, where did they get time for all this? That's blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another reason you do it is to remove miserliness from yourself. That stinginess is a killer, and that's why we should also be giving zakah. Okay, zakah, part of that reason of zakah is to get rid of that miserliness from within ourselves. Now again, I remind the sisters here that, look, you should try and give your own zakah. Okay, do not force the husband to give it, because if zakah is due on your wealth or on your jewelry, let's say you don't even have a job and you got jewelry, okay? So then if it's due, that means you're actually rich. If you weren't rich enough by Allah's standard, you would not have had to pay zakah. So the fact that you're having to pay zakah means you've actually got enough money to be considered rich. So give some away. Feel the joy of giving zakah, of doing one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Then another one is to develop care for others. That's where you'd be spending in charity, and to develop generosity as a trait in us. You want to become that sort of a person who cares for others. Now the ruin that's mentioned at the end of this hadith, where the angel makes dua against a person, but not spending on. So scholars said this is when he's making dua against a person for ruin. That indicates that the spending that's mentioned in the hadith, or that's referred to in the hadith, that's intended in the hadith is the obligatory charity, like zakat and the ones on the family, the bare minimum on the family. Okay, so it's not the voluntary one, but it's the obligatory one. Because like if you leave the voluntary acts, you don't get punished for it. That's where that interpretation is coming from. Then there could be two types of ruins. One is actual loss of money and wealth. So you've had heaps and now a lot of it is gone, or all of it is gone. So that's what could happen if you don't do the obligatory charity on you. Or you might not have blessing in the money. So as I mentioned, you think you've got a lot, but by the middle of the month, it's all gone. Well before the next paycheck, for example, it's all gone. Things are breaking down, or this is happening, or that's happening, and you don't know where things are gone. And it could be in the money, but it could also be even more than that, which is even in your time. And we're feeling this very often in our lives, unfortunately. All right, hadith number 33. The Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said, "Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir falyukrim dayfah." Whoever believes in Allah and the last day, let him honor his guest. Now, this is actually part of another hadith that I've mentioned before. We've had very similar two other hadith, and they're actually one big hadith. In this book, the author has broken it up into three, but they're actually part of one big same hadith. That it says exactly like this: whoever believes in Allah and His last day, then let him, honor his guest. Let him be good to, don't let him speak good or remain silent. Let him be good to his relatives, and so on. Okay, so when the Prophet ﷺ, when he couples this sort of a thing with faith, it adds extra value to this, as I've mentioned last time. So because faith is the key to eternal happiness. So in the Quran as well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, many times He talks to us about, man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir, for example, whoever has faith in Allah and the last day. Because it's these faith in these things that drive us to do good and to stay away from haram. And then the hadith is also telling us that if you claim to believe in Allah and the last day, then this is what you should be doing. This has to be part of your life. This has to be part of you. Okay? Which is that we should be, honoring our guest. So this has to be, we have to be characterized by this. Now, how long should we host the guest? Because honoring the guest is like hosting the guest. So now some scholars said it's like 1 day is obligatory, 3 days is voluntary, meaning 1 plus 2. And others said no, 3 days is obligatory. Many of the scholars said none of the days is obligatory, but all days are voluntary. So if you do it, it's good. If you don't, you wouldn't be sinning. That's what a lot of the scholars said. But there seems to be proof towards at least 1 day being obligatory, and then after that being voluntary. So we should try as much as we can to host and honor the guest. And some of the scholars, they said that this actual requirement is more so for towns and not so much for cities, especially where we live, where you've got hotels. Because then the person, the visitor, the guest that comes from overseas or interstate, they actually can go and live in a hotel or something. So there are facilities there. So some scholars pointed out that in today's time, in our situation with all these hotels and we're in big cities, that obligation is not there. So just something. But anyway, what we should be doing is we should be striving to do what we can. Don't look for the bare minimum. Again, remember we said, don't look for the bare minimum, try to aim for higher. And of course, if the guest is like a relative or someone in a dire need, then it might become a lot more than just recommended or close towards obligatory, depending on who's actually there. Like if it's a literal brother, sister, father, mother, then you're not going to say, look, the scholars said you can stay in a hotel, go stay in a hotel. Okay? But also, at the same time, this does not mean that, let's say, if your house is tiny and your wife is doing hijab, alhamdulillah, the way she's supposed to be, but the other people, the guests, for example, they don't care, and they've got people who are not mahram for your wife, and literally there is no space for your wife, for example, to move around if they were to come inside, then again, you need to start weighing things up. I guess this doesn't mean to an extent where you start letting go of your Islamic obligations, which is your wife's, for example, hijab, for the sake of honoring the guest. That's not what it's hinting at. And what is required from the guest when we talk about honoring is like to feed them from what you feed yourself and your own family. You don't have to do extra. You don't have to buy special food. You don't have to make special arrangements or something. Okay, it's taking care of them. So you're not going to give them less than what you normally do. That would be wrong. But you don't have to go out of your way to do a lot more than what you normally do for yourself. Okay, that's not required. As long as you're not insulting them, as long as you're not treating them badly, as long as you're doing something that's considered honoring. Okay, now remember, this sort of thing is not defined in Islam, in the Sharia. So exactly what you're supposed to be doing is not. What came is فَلْيُكْرِمْ ضَيْفَهُ, let him honor his guest. So it goes back to the good people of the society. What do the good people of the society regard as honoring a guest? That's what we're supposed to be doing. You got to match that. Don't go less than that, and you don't need to go too much more than that either. Now, I'd like to finish up with a story that I've mentioned more than once in my Telegram channel, and those who have been following it for a long time know. This is a story of an African boy of a long time ago. So I've heard this story from a sheikh in a lecture, but he didn't actually give a date or a place or anything, when it was and who it was, or which country and city it was or anything. But what happened is, there were a group of children, African children, in some African city playing outside the house, and a traveler came. This is going back some time before like GPS, before maps, before all this sort of things. So some traveler came to that city, and they asked the boy for directions. Look, I'm looking for this house or this person. Do you know where he is or where this house is or where that location is? So the boy, instead of just giving a normal answer, yes, I know, here it is, go that way, turn right, turn left, what the boy did was, and subhanAllah, compare this to the way we raise our children, what the boy did and said was, I know it, but I won't tell you until you come inside and have a meal with us. SubhanAllah, he said, I won't tell you until you come inside and have a meal with us. Now, unfortunately, if you compare that to what a lot of people today are being raised up with, it's either like to not pay too much attention to the guest or just the minimum. So what we would normally think is, look, you teach your son, daughter, help out anyone you can. If they ask directions, give them directions. That's nice. That's not bad. You haven't done anything wrong. But look at this tarbiyah, look at this upbringing of this boy. Imagine how superior his parents were that they instilled this in him, saying, subhanAllah, every time I think about it, I am just absolutely amazed what education he must have got inside his house that made him do something like this. Okay, absolutely. So this is what we should be, aiming for. Do not aim for too little or little. Aim for at least a good level, if not the highest. And look for what's best everywhere rather than what's the bare minimum again. All right, I'll stop here inshallah. And if you've got any questions, please write them down.